Jay always believed that his marriage to Maya was steady, built on love, shared goals, and years of companionship. They met in grad school and spent nearly a decade building a life together, full of routines, inside jokes, and quiet support. On the outside, everything looked perfect, but underneath, cracks had started to form. Jay noticed it in the small things. Maya's sudden distance. The way she looked through him instead of at him. The long silences that filled their once warm home. Still, he pushed those thoughts aside, convincing himself it was just stress from work or the passing storms that come in any relationship. Julian, Maya's younger brother, was around more often than usual, sleeping on her couch, borrowing Jay's car, asking odd questions. Jay chalked it up to family chaos. But a strange tension lingered in the air, like something heavy waiting to fall. He ignored it, choosing love over suspicion. What Jay didn't know was that his trust would soon be tested in the most painful way. Looking back, he'd remember that quiet before the storm, the way life felt like it was holding its breath, and wonder how he didn't see it coming. Sometimes, peace is just the pause before heartbreak. The night Jay had planned was supposed to be a celebration, a quiet, romantic dinner to mark their anniversary, complete with candles, wine, and a handwritten note he'd tucked into Maya's favorite novel. He came home early, his heart light, humming to himself as he carried in a box of her favorite pastries. But the moment he stepped through the door, the air felt wrong. Maya was seated at the kitchen table, her posture rigid, her expression a strange mix of fury and heartbreak. Spread out before her like evidence at a crime scene were receipts, printouts, and photographs. Jay's smile faded. "What is this?" he asked, stunned. "Don't pretend," she snapped, sliding the papers toward him. Hotel bills, dinner dates, even a jewelry receipt, places and moments he'd never lived, yet all stamped with his name and credit card. His mind raced. It had to be a mistake. But Maya wasn't listening. She was trembling, her voice breaking as she accused him of betrayal. "Julian found all of this," she said. "He saw you with her. A blonde. At that cafe, near your office." Jay's world tilted. He hadn't been there. None of it was true. But in that moment, the truth didn't matter. Maya had already decided. The room spun with disbelief. His breath caught between denial and fear. The anniversary turned into an ambush. His love story flipped into a nightmare. Jay tried to speak, to explain, but the weight of her accusations drowned out everything else. Jay stood frozen, his heartbeat thundering in his ears as Maya hurled accusation after accusation. The documents in her hands weren't just receipts. They were weapons, each one chipping away at the life he thought they'd built together. No matter how many times he insisted they were fake. Maya's eyes remained sharp with betrayal. "Don't lie to me," she snapped, her voice cracking like glass under pressure. "You think I haven't noticed? The late nights, the distance, the silence?" Her words stung more than the accusations themselves. Jay had worked so hard to keep their connection alive despite their busy schedules, leaving sweet notes in her lunch, arranging surprise weekend getaways, holding her close on restless nights. But none of that mattered now. Maya's mind was made up. Her faith in him had vanished, replaced by Julian's poisoned whispers and carefully forged lies. When she told him to get out, Jay didn't recognize the woman speaking. Her voice, once soft and warm, had turned cold and final. He packed a small bag, numb, and left the house they'd turned into a home. That night, he sat alone in a soulless hotel room, the silence pressing him like fog. Everything he knew, everything he loved, had been ripped away without warning, without trial. He was judged and sentenced in a single evening, his voice drowned beneath fabricated proof. And as the door closed behind him, Jay realized the deepest wound wasn't just the betrayal. It was the shattering of trust by the one person who should have believed him most. The days that followed felt like a descent into a quiet kind of madness. Jay found himself drifting through life in a daze, numb and disoriented, as if the world had tilted just slightly off axis. Friends who once called regularly stopped answering his texts. Colleagues avoided eye contact, whispering behind closed doors. The rumors, spread so effortlessly by Maya and amplified by Julian, had painted him as the cheating husband, the man who destroyed a seemingly perfect marriage. Every attempt he made to explain, to share his side, was met with skepticism or polite silence. Alone in his apartment, stripped of the warmth and familiarity of his home, Jay couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The nights stretched endlessly, filled with the ache of everything lost. He would sit on the floor, staring at the wall, replaying that moment in the kitchen, Maya's shaking hands, her wounded eyes, the crack of her voice as she told him to leave. It haunted him more than any nightmare ever could. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a flicker of resistance remained. He knew he hadn't done the things he was being accused of. He wasn't the man the world now believed he was. That quiet certainty, buried beneath the heartbreak, would become the seed of his healing. But at that moment, Jay was drowning in the cold aftermath of betrayal, exiled by the one person he had trusted most. The weight of being misunderstood crushed him, and yet unknowingly, he had already begun the first step toward reclaiming his life. Healing didn't come in a grand revelation for Jay. It arrived slowly, like the sun rising after a long and restless night. At first, it was just survival. He poured himself into work, taking on project after project, hoping that productivity would drown out the pain. Then came the silence, no longer deafening, but oddly comforting. In that quiet, he began to rediscover himself. Long walks with no destination. Sketching building designs not for clients, but just for the joy of it. Reconnecting with old friends who hadn't been swept up in the rumors. Little by little, Jay's spirit began to knit itself back together. He joined a community fitness class, not to get in shape, but to remember what it felt like to move forward, physically and emotionally. The loneliness didn't vanish overnight, but it softened, became bearable. He started journaling, not out of habit, but necessity, spilling out truths he hadn't dared say aloud. The name Maya slowly stopped showing up in the pages. The pain dulled into memory. He began to smile again, real, unforced smiles. He began to breathe deeper. What had once felt like the ruins of his life now looked like a foundation, a clean slate. For the first time in months, Jay stopped bracing for heartbreak. He realized that while betrayal had broken him, it hadn't ended him. Something stronger was emerging from the wreckage, something steadier, wiser, and quietly resilient. He wasn't just healing. He was becoming whole again, piece by hard-won piece. Elise came into Jay's life like a soft breeze through an open window, gentle, unassuming, yet unmistakably refreshing. She was the owner of a boutique design firm that had hired Jay's company for an office renovation. Their initial meetings were professional, filled with notes, sketches, and floor plans, but there was an ease to their interactions that neither of them expected. Elise wasn't flashy or dramatic. She didn't demand attention. She simply saw people, really saw them. And that was something Jay hadn't realized he craved so deeply. After the project wrapped, he hesitated for days before working up the courage to ask her out. To his surprise, she smiled and said, "I was hoping you would." Their first dinner was effortless. They laughed about bad coffee and design disasters. And when Jay opened up about his past, his failed marriage, the lies, the heartbreak, Elise didn't flinch. She listened without judgment, her gaze steady and kind. "That must have been awful," she said simply, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. That touch, so small and sincere, unraveled something knotted inside him. As their relationship grew, Jay began to feel grounded in a way he hadn't in years. Elise was not a fantasy or a distraction. She was calm where there had been chaos, clarity where there had been confusion. With her, Jay rediscovered not just love, but trust. And in that quiet, steady trust, he found a kind of peace he thought had been lost to him forever. Elise didn't rescue him. She reminded him he could stand again. It was nearly a year to the day since Jay's life had imploded when the truth finally clawed its way into the light. The call came unexpectedly. From Arjun, a friend who had once believed Maya's version of the story, but now sounded shaken. "You need to meet me," he said, urgency lacing his voice. Jay found himself sitting across from Julian in a dimly lit bar, the same man who had quietly dismantled his marriage. Julian looked like a shadow of himself, disheveled, glassy-eyed, reeking of guilt and whiskey. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with bravado, but with the crumbling cadence of a man unraveling. "Elite, Julian confessed," his voice barely audible above the hum of conversation. Jay's breath caught. "The receipts, the photos. I forged it all. I made up the woman. I wanted you gone." The words landed like cold iron. Jay stared, stunned, as Julian poured out his twisted reasoning. Jealousy, loneliness, a warped need for control. "You had everything," Julian said bitterly, "and she barely saw me." For a moment, Jay felt like he was falling again, but this time through something darker. The realization that someone had deliberately destroyed his life for no reason other than spite. He left that bar with trembling hands and a hollow ache in his chest. Not from guilt, but from the weight of knowing that the person he trusted had believed a lie so carefully crafted. The truth had finally arrived, but it came far too late to undo the damage. When Jay finally heard the truth from Julian, there was no satisfaction, only a heavy, echoing emptiness. He had spent months wondering if he had missed a clue, if he could have fought harder, explained better, loved more convincingly. But now he knew. Nothing he could have done would have changed what happened. Maya's trust in him had been so fragile, so easily swayed, that it shattered without a second thought. Even as Julian's confession cleared Jay's name, it didn't erase the months of isolation, the friendships lost, the sleepless nights spent questioning his own worth. And then, as if on cue, the messages from Maya began. First cautious, then urgent, then desperate. She begged to talk, to explain, to apologize. But Jay couldn't bring himself to answer. She had made her decision, chosen doubt over love, suspicion over faith. That choice had destroyed them. Now, even though vindicated, Jay didn't feel free. He felt tired, worn, and underneath the exhaustion was something colder, resolve. When Maya sent a long message confessing that she'd learned the truth, that Julian had admitted everything and that she couldn't forgive herself for not believing Jay, he felt a pang of sadness, yes, but not longing. That door was closed. He had walked through fire, and what he'd found on the other side wasn't a longing for the past. It was Elise and the quiet strength of a love rooted in trust. Redemption, Jay realized, wasn't about making things right with Maya. It was about choosing not to look back. The day Jay proposed to Elise was bathed in golden sunlight and quiet certainty. They had spent the morning at a lakeside cabin, sipping coffee on the porch, their fingers intertwined without a word. When he knelt down with the ring, her gasp turned into laughter, then tears, and then a breathless yes that seemed to echo through the trees. From that moment, their lives intertwined even more deeply. They moved in together, blending routines and dreams with an ease that felt earned, not forced. Planning the wedding brought joy, not tension. Decisions were made with smiles, not arguments. Jay often caught himself pausing mid-task just to watch Elise, amazed by how deeply peace had taken root in his life. He told her everything, every wound, every misstep, every lingering scar. And Elise never recoiled. Instead, she listened with eyes full of understanding and a heart that never flinched. "I trust you," she told him one night, her hand resting over his. "Not because you're perfect, but because I know who you are." Those words healed him more than 1,000 apologies ever could. With Elise, there were no mind games, no ghosts whispering doubt. There was only presence, genuine, enduring, patient love. The shadow of his past with Maya no longer haunted him. It simply reminded him of how far he had come. Jay didn't feel lucky. He felt whole. And for the first time in years, he wasn't bracing for something to go wrong. He was embracing everything that had gone right. Jay never expected to see Maya again, but fate had other plans. A month before his wedding to Elise, he ran into her at a quiet corner cafe. She looked different, thinner, paler, with sadness etched in her features. When she approached him, her voice was soft, almost broken. "I've accepted that it's over," she said, eyes full of regret. She apologized, not just for believing the lies, but for not trusting the man she once claimed to love. Her confession was raw, unguarded, and filled with the kind of self-awareness that had never existed between them before. She handed him an envelope before leaving. Inside, a handwritten letter and the wedding ring he had once placed on her finger. That evening, Jay showed everything to Elise. They read the letter together in silence, understanding its weight, but knowing it changed nothing. They decided to donate the ring's value to a charity, turning pain into purpose. On their wedding day, surrounded by people who truly knew their story, Jay felt nothing but gratitude. Not for the betrayal, but for the path it forced him to walk. A path that led him to a love built on trust, and a life worth celebrating. In today's world, where assumptions spread faster than truth and trust is often fragile, Jay's story is a powerful reminder. Never let fear or outside influence cloud your judgment of the people you love. Take time to listen, to ask, and to believe in the character you've built together, not just the evidence laid in front of you. Relationships thrive on open communication and trust, not suspicion and impulse. If someone shows you honesty and consistency, honor that with patience and grace. Because once trust is broken, even an apology may come too late to rebuild what was lost.